whatever day you're watching this. If you're watching this, you missed day 1 of our kitchen safety, whether or not it's because you're full online or if you just weren't physically in the room. Whatever it may be, it's the same lecture everybody's getting. So, kitchen safety. Yeah, this is a requirement that I go through. You will be tested on this closed note test. Only closed note quiz. I just legally have to do that to ensure your safety and to prove that I gave you all of this information. So, we're going to talk about preventing fires, burns, falls, cuts, choking, and electric shock. Today, we're going to get through probably about that much of it. So those first two, I would write this down because you're more likely to remember it. I do go relatively fast. You don't have to write this slide down. But I do go relatively fast. So just be aware if you need to pause to write things down, do so. So first of all, preventing burns and fires. Our first thing we want to do is always prevent. If we prevent it, we don't have to worry about it. First things first, keep our hair tied back. This is, one, a sanitation thing. We don't want hair in the food. But 2, long hair can start on fire when exposed to heat. 2, always use oven mitts. It sounds like common sense, or oven pot holders. It sounds like common sense. You would be surprised what is not common sense. Turn pan handles inward. So when you are cooking, you don't want that pan handle hanging over the edge where you walk past it, bump it, and spill boiling hot water on yourself or the person who's standing behind you. Don't do it. Tilt pot lid away from your face to prevent burns from the steam. So steam is a lot hotter than water because, that's how the phases of matter work, where ice is cold and water is medium and steam is very, very, very hot. That being said, if you get steam burns, they can be very bad. So when you lift up a lid, you tilt it away from yourself so the steam goes away from you. Keep towels and other materials away from heating elements. This seems like the perfect time to talk about the fire triangle. So you may have heard of the fire triangle before, especially if you're a Boy Scout or something. I don't know, take wilderness classes. But there are 3 things that a fire needs. 1 is heat, the other is oxygen, and the final is fuel. You remove one of these 3 things, and you no longer have a fire. So, when the fire department comes and puts a bunch of water on a burning house, they're getting rid of some of that heat, they're getting rid of oxygen. And that is how they put out a fire. We'll talk about why you don't use water in a kitchen fire momentarily. But just keep that in mind. That's what they're doing. Obviously, in a kitchen, we have oxygen because we can breathe. We also have heat because a lot of things we cook need heat. And we also have fuel because most of our food is actually fuel, especially sugar. Sugar burns really well. And I know this from personal experience. When I was a freshman in college, I was sitting in my intro to theater class, and class had just started. And before class, I was sitting on my phone playing whatever game was popular at the time, Jetpack Joyride or some stupid thing like that. And class started, I set it down on my lap, and about 5 minutes in, I feel it buzz, so I look down, and it's my grandma. And it says, "Hey, nothing to be concerned about. Your dad's house is on fire. Everyone's okay. We'll let you know more when we know more." And I looked up. I looked around the classroom, and this was like an auditorium. I looked around, and this professor had a really strict cell phone policy. But I was also like, I feel like this is a time that I can respond. So I just quick held down my phone and typed back, "How on fire?" She responded that she didn't know. I have no idea what the rest of the class was about. Like, not a clue. I should have just got up to leave, to be honest. In college, you do that. But my phone just kept blowing up the rest of the class of people just calling and texting me, telling me my house is on fire. I think I got a call from my old high school, which turned out to be my old ag teacher. And then I got a text from my brother, and all it said was, Dad's house is on fire. I'm like, thanks, Grandma, for texting me before David did, because David's text was a lot more nerve-wracking than Grandma's text. Grandma very carefully tried to phrase that one. But anyway, what had turned out had happened after much investigation from the fire department and all that. My younger brother, who was 15, he was a sophomore in high school, he had woken up late, threw a Pop-Tart in the toaster, was getting ready for school, saw his ride had showed up, darted out the front door, went to school, forgot the Pop-Tart in the toaster. The toaster got jammed down, and so we've got the heat. Turns out Pop-Tarts are flammable. Actually, they're very flammable, and there's lots of stories of Pop-Tarts starting house fires, so, be aware of that. And the Pop-Tart lit on fire and then burned the entire house down. So, we had oxygen, because obviously we could breathe in our house. We had the heat, we had the fuel. That was all it needed. So, that is why we need to be super aware in the kitchen about how all of that is happening. Super aware of our fuel and our heat, because there's not much we can do about our oxygen because we need to breathe. We will talk about how you remove oxygen once there is a fire, but we're going to talk about burns first. First of all, if you get burned, tell me. That's the biggest thing. Sorry. There was one more. Clean grease and bits of food off the oven. Grease, again, is a fuel. So if you spill something on the oven, well, if you spill something anywhere, clean it up. But, especially on the oven, because that is a fire hazard. So, treating minor burns. If you get burned, run it under cool water. There was a time when I was in high school, I was working at a staff breakfast for our FFA chapter. I took out a pan, bumped my wrist, and, it was just a second, and so I didn't think anything of it, and 20 minutes later, it was still kind of stinging. It blistered really badly. If I would have just run it under some cool water, right away, probably wouldn't have been a problem, but because I let it continue to burn, I had some really bad blisters and some scars for a while. It was a fun time. Apply lotion, moisturizer, burn cream. Again, after you've run it under cool water, talk to me. Cover loosely with clean gauze. Again, if you're at home and you have talked to the adults in your life after this has occurred, you do want loose gauze. If you tie it too tightly, that can also be really, really painful. So, we're not going to worry too much about this fire extinguisher bit, because if it's so bad there's a fire extinguisher, I'm shooting the fire extinguisher. That's how that goes. But, big thing is, if you're at home and you're shooting a fire extinguisher, shoot at the base of the fire, don't shoot at the top of the fire, because fire extinguishers suffocate, and if you put it on the top of the fire, it's not doing anything. So, base of the fire. Smother the fire with salt, baking soda, or a wet towel. I will be keeping baking soda at every stove. So if there's ever a pan fire, you can put the lid on top. That'll put it out. Also, dumping baking soda in will put it out. Never put water on a grease fire. Fat is hydrophobic, meaning if you put water on a grease fire, it will just spread. Big thing is, don't panic. Putting the baking soda or a lid on top of a on-fire pan will suffocate the fire, so that's removing the oxygen. Another story. While I was student teaching, this was a story that I was told, not a story I experienced. My predecessor, the person who student taught at the school before me, had supervised a foods class, and my cooperating teacher walked into the room, to see an oven on fire and the student teacher with a broom trying to get the thing that was on fire, as a piece of paper, out of the oven, but it was a plastic broom handle, so the plastic was melting as they're trying to get this fire out. Once everything was resolved, my cooperating teacher was trying to get the story out of them, and no one was talking. So she's like, fine, we are going to be doing gross assignments for the next, until someone fesses up. So for a week, they did horrible assignments, really, really sucky assignments, until finally a kid fessed up, explained what happened. He was pretending to, not pretending. He had a crumpled up piece of paper. He threw it, trying to, like, make a basket into the garbage. Missed, it went into an open oven and caught fire. So when I say things like no throwing things in the kitchen, that's why I'm saying them. Because people start things on fire. All important things. Preventing falls. Tips. Clean up spills immediately. As we talked about cleaning up grease spills on a oven, you also want to clean up spills on the floor. Someone slips and falls. I mean, they could get hurt, like twist an ankle, whatever. They could also grab things like, I don't know, the boiling water that's on the stove and cover themselves in third-degree burns. Not ideal. Keep floors clear of clutter. Backpacks should stay at tables, that sort of thing. We don't have rugs in the food room, so that's not super important, but if you have rugs at home, make sure they're secure, they're not like half folded for you to trip on. Make sure your shoes are on well, no flip-flops. If you fall, tell me. If someone seems to be broken, like, well, don't, like, leave them there, like, tell someone, but don't move them either. Spinal cord injuries are a thing, but, like, most of the time if you slip and fall, you're like, oh, that kind of hurts, and that's it, but, like, do be careful. Preventing cuts, we didn't get that far in the other group. So, that's as much as we did today. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe.